Welcome back for your second instalment of A Celtic State of Mind today. It's the first appearance by myself. I'm Paul John Dykes, and I'm joined by James Mackenzie making his second appearance of the day. James, thank you for joining us. It's our first pre-match of the second term of Ange Postecoglou, and I guess over the last few weeks we've been talking about what kind of team would you expect to see with players coming back from international duty, etc, etc. And it is this type of hybrid side of fringe players. There's a few under 18 sitting on the bench. There's no real surprises, but there's a few players who have been selected, James, that I'm kind of looking forward to seeing them play.
Yeah, there's a few sort of unknown quantities in the 11. Then there's a few players that people already know, but they want to see a bit more from them. People, they would have been asking before this game for, I want to see some B team players. I want to see some of the outsiders get a bit more game time. Well, and just pretty much granted everyone's requests.
Yeah, I mean, we'll run through the team for anyone who's not seen it breaking on Twitter. We are playing SC Wiener Victoria. I think that's the pronunciation. Normally before a game, James, we'd have a wee chat about danger men. How do you think they're going to line up? Let's be honest, mate, we haven't got a clue about the opposition, really, do we?
Nah, I'm not as clued in my Austrian football. It's a bit unprofessional for myself.
I know. I mean, how much research can you do? Listen, we're here to enjoy the first Celtic performance of Ange's second season. We're hoping for big things in the campaign. We've performed well in the transfer market, and the game kicks off at 5:30. It's live on Celtic TV. We'll be watching the game. We'll come back to you at full time. And we'll obviously keep this up throughout the season as well. We may be doing it closer to Celtic Park this season so that I can actually go to the games as well. So the times may change. We normally go live as soon as the final whistle blows. It might take me half an hour to get to wherever we're doing it. But we'll keep you updated on all the socials, etc. And you have an opportunity tonight, I guess, to get in on the action yourself, because I'm not sure it's going to be as busy as the usual bulletin, but we'll see what happens tonight. James Mappy, let's get positive, less of who we need to replace and more of who we are blessed to have. Our new slogan should be, the 12th man is ready. Well, let's run through the team. Let's have a look at the team. Joe Hart captains the side with Osaze Urhoghide at right back, Alexandro Bernabe at left back, making his debut, although not competitive in the hoops. And the centre halves are Chris Julien partnering young Bosun Lawal. James McCarthy, Yosuke Ideguchi and Rio Atate make up the three midfielders, with James Forrest, Johnny Kenny getting a start and Mikey Johnson the three up top. On the bench, Siegrist, Oluwayemi, Dede, Josh Dede. We also have, Matthew Anderson, Liam Shaw. We've got Ben Summers, Rocco Vata, Albion Adjeti and Owen Muffet. So there are a few players in there that catch the eye, but let's run through the team. Again, there's a few names on that bench that we might not be that familiar with. But I think when you look back to last season in the pre-season, I know that a few people have retweeted the first lineup under Ange, and it's like night and day. But there is an opportunity here, James, for people to make their mark. Tony Ralston being the prime example last season.
Well, you'd think someone like Christopher Julian, after these sort of cryptic tweets and cryptic Instagram posts, would be looking to make an impression today. But you've also got the young players looking to announce themselves as Celtic players. They'll be looking to make an impression, not only to the fans, but to the manager as well. Sort of state their claim as, I'm not just a B team player, I can make an impact in this Celtic first team. Then I've got James McCarthy, he'll be looking to really sort of stake a name for himself. The same with Yosuke Ideguchi. And then there's some of the players like sort of Rio Hatate. He'll just be looking to get some minutes in his legs.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we will run through the players individually, but again, as I said before, get your questions, your queries, your points made. Egyptian King, good day, folks, and a good day to you as well. Gary Melrose woke up in a bit of a panic at 4:30, frantically tuned into Celtic TV. It was only 4:30. Senior moment. But there's nothing wrong with having a wee afternoon nap, Gary. I do it on a regular basis. Once you get to a certain age, James, you will understand. Big Red comes in. Oi, oi, Savalois. Anybody got any idea what that is? Please explain, Big Red. Explain. What does that mean? Strangelove the Doctor is also in the chat. Just finished watching the committee hearing of Mean Furor, lovely plumage. You see the kind of chat you get on Axom, James? It can take you to different dimensions, and I love it. Joe Hart in goals. He's finally being challenged because we brought in Seagrist, who's obviously on the bench. What's that going to do? 3 keepers. And the thing I'm going to say here is, firstly, what's the challenge going to do? Because I don't think Joe Hart's ever been challenged as a Celtic goalkeeper. And secondly, what does this say for all the other goalkeepers at Celtic Park? This is the 3 we're running with. The rest of them are going to have to really get loaned out. I'm thinking of the likes of Duhan. Hazard's already out on loan. I can't see there being a future for anyone else other than those 3 this season, at least.
You would think someone like Ross Duhan has sort of resigned himself to loan spells and maybe a permanent transfer, but you can't really see a future for him because he's never really been shown that he will have a future at Celtic. Conor Hazard, I think he returns in January. I think that's how the Scandinavian sort of seasons work. So I assume we'll review Conor Hazard at that moment in time. With Scott Bain, I think he's sort of fairly comfortable just being at Celtic. He's sort of happy to be there. You never really want the players that are happy to be there. But he's a sort of player that keeps up spirits in the dressing room. He's sort of a good player to have around. Benjamin Seagrist, he'll be looking to really push Joe Hart for his place this season. It remains to be seen whether he will be able to push Joe Hart, but I suppose as the games go on, we'll see how that goes. Toby Oyeyemi, I would love for him to get subbed in the second half, because in these pre-season friendlies, you usually have a team for the first half and a team for the second half. So we'll see a lot of youthful faces in the second half, and I'm hoping Toby Oyeyemi gets the opportunity to play in a Celtic shirt.
No, I agree with that. You keep an eye on the B team, of course you do, and now they're in the pyramid system. It's added a wee bit more interest into that. I remember back in the day looking at the Celtic View, reading all the reserve match reports, etc., seeing players progressing through the ranks into the Celtic first team. But over the last season or so, the 3 names really that keep coming up are Toby Owulayemi, Lawal at centre half, and of course Rocco Vata, and all 3 of them could well feature tonight, and I'm looking forward to that because I know it's a bounce game and there's a few points coming in about the level of opposition as well, and I'm not thinking it's going to be particularly difficult for Celtic tonight, but you never take anything for granted. Egyptian King, can't wait to see wee Vata and Lawal play. Absolutely. You see players like Dembele leaving the club. Not that long ago, Ben Doak leaving the club. I don't think we were too concerned near the end that Dembele was leaving, but there has been a load of other young players leaving the club, and certainly Vata is going to be getting interest very, very soon, you would expect, James, and that's a player that you want him to be in and about this first team under Ange Postecoglou. You want to show him there is a pathway to this first team, don't you?
Yeah, Rocco Vata has been one of the real sort of standouts in the B team. There's been a good crop of Irish, Albanian talent coming through for the Irish national team. I'm not sure where that came from, but you would expect Rocco Vata to hopefully be in around the first team if he can make a real good strides in these pre-season friendlies, because Celtic really need to show these B team players that there is a pathway to the first team. We've been banging on about it on Axon for the last few weeks, so now it's time for Celtic to act on it.
No, absolutely. And you know, that's the big thing. We were talking about various seasons that put you in mind of last season, and I know that the Wim Jansen season came up time and time again. And the one comparison that I don't think you can make with Wim Jansen's side, and I think it's because he knew himself probably at some point early doors he wasn't staying for a year, any longer than a year rather, is that he didn't bleed any youngsters in, Wim Jansen, because he knew that it wasn't about that for him that season. It was about winning the league at all costs. But one thing that it's pretty clear Ange wants to do is have a system whereby there is the next 3-4 players coming into the system, coming into the first team. He wants that B team to have that seamless transition, which I think is why the McManus move will work really well for us. If we look at the right, well, I'm guessing he's playing right back. I know he can play centre half as well. Urhoghide. It looked as though his loan deal would be a permanent one. James, and I think it was yourself the other week said that, you know, people were banging on about his performance. Remember, he was thrown in Europe last season. People were banging on about that performance. I remember being at the game and I wasn't impressed with him. I thought
he was making some big tackles, but then it was him being so far out of position that was leading to the need for those tackles. I think it might have been Paolo Maldini, the greatest defender of all time. He said, "It's what was it? Say? If you have to make a tackle as a defender, then you've already made a mistake." So that sums up that game for Rigidi.
Yeah, definitely. That is so true. And for me, Urhoghide, I don't like writing anyone off, but I guess that it seemed so close that he was going to get this permanent move to Ostend, and it didn't happen. And I think it came down to wages or Celtic's fee demands. Couldn't afford it. So he's back in the fold, and obviously Welsh here at Celtic, you may well be utilised. I'll be interested as well to see Bernabe's debut. First Argentinian ever to play for Celtic. We know that there is an Argentina CSC. They got a right bit of coverage a few years back. They'll be delighted. I'm sure Argentina flags will be popping up at Celtic Park this season as well. You're looking forward to seeing the new man in action?
Yeah, we've heard a lot about Bernabe, a lot of excitement. Very good going forward, but some defensive frailties there apparently. But that's all just what we've been hearing. That's just all ifs and buts from everybody else. We'll get to see our first proper action of Alexandre Bernabe. So as someone who spoke to him last week, I'm looking forward to see what he's got to offer.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, that last week's press conference, again, I thought it was tremendous. I thought the translator played a really great part in it as well. But they were
massive, the translator.
Oh,
yeah, on our defence.
Big lad. But he was thrown when somebody asked the question in Spanish. And Bernabe had to be told, no one in the room knows what that guy's just said. I'm going to have to translate it first. But these things do tend to happen from time to time. I think when I'm looking at where we are tonight, we've got over 250 you're watching, so thank you all very much for joining us. It's one of the ones on Axon where you think to yourself, yeah, but can you do it on a summer's Wednesday night against SC Wiener Victoria? And you obviously can, because you have turned up probably just stumbled across this particular bulletin because we haven't announced it. That was my bad. We were out and about earlier on. Mappy tells us that our opponents tonight were beaten 6-0 by Admira Wacker last week. So this should be a walk in the park. I remember back in the day, was it under Wim Jansen now? This is a good question. We beat a team pre-season, James, 21-0. 21-0. I think it was a Dutch amateur side, and people racking up like 4 and 6 goals. Someone out there tell me who is the opposition. Centre half, this is an interesting one for me. You've got Chris Julian in there with one of the rising stars in Lawal, who we had purchased from Watford specifically for the B team, but with a view obviously to him progressing into the first team. He's 19 years of age. You hope that, like Vata, he will be part of the first team squad this season from time to time. Julien, though, what's our relationship with Julien? I said the other day there that I kind of checked out on him because I felt that he had checked out on us. But here he is back in the team. Can he turn it around? Can he still play a part this season, do you think, James?
Well, as a big Christopher Julian fan, I would hope that he can turn that around, because I don't really get where a lot of the where people have been turned off at by Christopher Julian. Because for me, it seems like he got an injury, putting his body on the line to stop Celtic conceding a goal. He was out for, what was it, a year and a half, something like that. And somehow in that year and a half, he's gone from being the best defender at the club to being punted out the door. I've never really understood that, but I hope he gets another proper chance. But I can't see him sticking around to sit on the bench. I think if he's wanting to play proper football, he'll be looking to leave Celtic.
I think you're right in relation to what happened last season. If you imagine the relationship, the partnership rather, between Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers wasn't as solid as it was, and we'd be crying out for a centre-half, wouldn't we? We'd be crying out for the return of Chris Julian, but that is the way it goes in football. McCarthy, Ideguchi and Hatate I find as an interesting mix. Are you expecting McCarthy to be playing the 8, Ideguchi as the 6, Hatate as the 10? I mean, that's the first question, James. How are they going to line up?
I'd imagine it would maybe be McCarthy as the 6, because whenever he's came on off the bench for Celtic, McCarthy's played at that 6 role to sort of calm the game down and sort of hold up play a bit. The McCarthy signing originally was something I never really understood, but he's here for the ride, so we've got to be here for him.
Yeah, and it seems as though You think back to when he arrived, he didn't have the pre-season. It's so important, James. You're way behind if you don't have that intensity with a team. Never mind your own team, but he didn't have it. And so he's trying to keep fit during the pre-season himself. That would have kind of set him back. If you come back and you're sharp, he's obviously not worrying about international football games and all that kind of stuff, so he's rested and he's had a good pre-season under his belt. Yes, I think he can contribute. I've said time and time again on Axom that he's one of the signings that, it might not happen immediately, but it could well happen, and hopefully he can play a part. Like you say, Ideguchi could well play the number 8. How big a season is it for him?
This is the sort of real start. This is the start of Ideguchi's Celtic career, because last season was a write-off when he got snapped at Rex Park. So it was all over for him from then. But you hope he can really push on, because from the glimpses you've seen, he's looked all right. There could be something there. Ange wouldn't have signed him if there wasn't something there. So then hopefully we see that this season.
I keep thinking back to the fact that he had this opportunity before over here, and he played for Leeds, or he signed for Leeds, but he never played for them and loaned out. And sometimes when it comes to the mentality of a footballer, is there maybe something in there where he's thinking, I'm going to prove you wrong, I can make it in British football?
Yeah, best believe it will be playing on his mind, because he'll have known that, because I think he got a lot of stick back home in Japan because it didn't work out in Europe. So people be saying, he's just another player who's going to stick around in the J League, maybe not make a splash in the national team, but he's come back over to Europe to give it a second shot, which says a lot about his mentality as well, to give it a second try. Because many would just settle for playing the J League and sitting at home, but he's given it a proper bash, and we hope we get the best out of him.
Yeah, I will really watch on with interest tonight and see. Hopefully we get a good performance out of him. As I said before, get your comments made. We're now over 350 strong on the Axon match day against our opponents this evening. Ian McMonigal, a jetty. I'm glad I never went over to Austria.
He is a player. In a pre-season game.
He did.
Season. Don't forget.
This is the thing, right? Who scored the first ever goal under Brendan Rodgers? And it was Nadir Chifchi, right? Check the friendlies out. Who scored the first ever goal under Ange? Albion Ajeti. And you're looking at that situation thinking, maybe we'll get a tune out of him. And it didn't seem to happen all season. He's sitting on the bench tonight. It is possible that he'll get on, because at the moment leading the line is Johnny Kenny, another player a bit like Lawal, who came in specifically to play for the B team. He's getting a chance tonight. He's highly rated, coming over from Irish football, and again you think him, Vata, Olayemi, Lawal, if they're able at some point in this season, James, to get into the squads, get on the bench, make a few appearances here and there, that is progress for them this season, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure many would have had the fright of their life when they saw Jay Kenny in the Celtic starting, but thankfully it's Johnny Kenny up front. We signed him from, was it Shamrock Rovers or was it Sligo Rovers in January?
I'm going to say Shamrock Rovers. No, wait a minute. That was Liam Scales, wasn't it? So it was Sligo, yeah.
We got him from Sligo Rovers in January, and he's been in and around the B team. He's been playing well, I'm pretty sure. So you'd hope he can get a tune out of there if he wants to make a push for the Irish national team, because they've been given a lot of young players an opportunity, because they haven't really been in the best of the states. They're still in a good enough state to batter Scotland, but we won't really talk about that. So you'd be hoping Bosun Lal. I think if Bosun Lal, he should be looking to show Celtic that they shouldn't be looking to get another centre back. There's been a lot of talk from the media and from fans about how we need another centre back, whether that be a starter or rotation. So it's a big game for Lowell to try and prove himself as well for this pre-season.
Massive, because these guys came to Celtic with reputations from Watford and Sligo Rovers, like you say. That connection, of course, with Sligo goes right back to the formation of the club. Andrew Kierans, who, better known as Brother Walfred, was a Sligonian. And of course, so was Sean Fallon, the late great Sean Fallon from Sligo. So it's always nice to keep that link. And if Johnny Kenny can score a couple tonight, then you kind of start looking at him and thinking, well, you never know, he might well be one of the guys on the bench. Because you look at last season, I've been saying for weeks we need another striker. Because, Ajeti, if I've written him off, I probably have. There was a couple of weeks where I'd forgotten about him. So I think I have written him off. But I go back to that game in December where, Kyogo should never have played, but he did, gets injured, and Giakoumakis wasn't fit, and we're forced to bring on 18-year-old Joey Dawson, who would sign from Scunthorpe, very much like the other young guys we've mentioned. Yeah. See the thing with Joey Dawson, he played quite well that day. I thought he played pretty well. But that's not what you want as the only option on the bench. You want them to be an option where the time's right to put them in and you start bleeding them into the squad, and you hope that you see the likes of Kenny. But as you say, certainly no John Joe Kenny. Jamesy Forrest starting on the right with Mikey Johnston on the left. We know that it's not the last chance saloon for Forrest because he signed a new deal. What's your thoughts on Mikey though?
I would be lying if I said there wasn't some groans for myself when I saw Mikey Johnston start. I'm not his biggest fan. I'm the sort of person that thinks he should be out the door. I'd much rather someone like Owen Moffat was starting, or even if we pushed Forrest out to the left and gave Rocco Vata a shot on the right, I'd be much more in favour of that. There's also in this sort of start a severe lack of sort of pace down that right hand side because James Forrest hasn't really got the legs anymore, and Sazi Uragiri is just a big lump. So you've not really got much down the right hand side, then you've got Mikey Johnston on the left. So hopefully we can produce some stuff through the middle.
Yeah, lovely blue skies tonight. I'm just keeping an eye on the footage, James, because I think we maybe started 1 or 2 minutes late. It's a tidy wee pitch that they're playing on, so hopefully we'll be starting and joining the action in about 10 minutes time or so. Let's get back to some of the points coming through. We're almost at 400 strong, which I think is phenomenal on a Wednesday night for our first pre-season game. The Raga 3... Let's just gently build up those hamstrings, eh? Yeah, absolutely. And that's another thing. We spoke during the season about the Jurgen Klopp situation where he went to Liverpool and, he plays and trains in an intensive style, James, and what the Liverpool guys found, and Anfield Drap spoke about it, was the amount of these injuries that they were getting first season round. But then the players get to that point where they've acclimatised, if that's the right word, to the training and the intensity of the training, and we don't see as many. Obviously, if we bring new players in, they need to get up to that level as well. But you would hope, and in particular the two guys we've just mentioned, Jamesy and Mikey, that there's no injury issues this season for that type of player with that type of injury.
Yeah, the last thing you want, especially in pre-season, is much like what happened to Karamoko last season, a sort of a disaster of a tackle that sort of delays a season or delays the development of a young player's career. So you'd hope for a good clean game, no severe injuries at all for Celtic. Is it a plastic surface or is it on grass?
Let's have a look. It's no longer at the park. That's a good question, actually. I couldn't tell from the action, but let's hope it's grass.
A lot less unscathed.
Well, I mean, I think back to I often get asked who's the greatest Celtic player your kind of Celtic support in life, and there's so many you could mention, and maybe one of the obvious ones is Larsson, but I always go back to Paul McStay, and I don't know if it's because you watch the games through that kind of reminiscence of a young boy, James, and you see this guy, the maestro in the centenary season in particular, but people, if you cast your mind back, the actual injury that eventually finished his career was an ankle injury. And when he got injured was in a pre-season friendly over in Ireland. We went over to Ireland and it was Liam Brady's first season. We went over there and McStay took a really dull challenge. Actually, we put it on one of our videos for the Celtic collection, the Axom retrospective. And it's with absolute regret. He did come back, of course he did. He played for another 5 or 6 years. But the issue that you have there is these bounce games, like you've just said there, did it end Dembele's Celtic career? Possibly. Because I felt that was the last throw of the dice for Dembele at that point. This time last year, Bristol City were playing. And was it an ankle break or a fracture? And
I think it might have been a break.
And it virtually wrote off his season. And you're thinking to yourself, it didn't quite happen for him under Neil Lennon, but if it's going to happen for him, it will happen under Ange. And we've seen how Ange can develop players. So, I know yesterday's title to the bulletin was where did it all go wrong for Dembele. I think a big part of it was bad luck, and I think you've got to say that.
Yeah, a lot of it goes down to luck. There's been some reports, we don't know if they've been confirmed, if they're true. I think it was The Athletic that published it. It was during the COVID season where we were having a lot of injury trouble, just weren't playing very good. Apparently Dembele went to Lennon's door asking for some more game time because we're not playing very good. We've got a lot of injuries here, and apparently it hurt Lennon's ego that bad that he outcast him out the team. So I think a lot of the blame can go with Neil Lennon as well as luck for me.
Not yet, and we have obviously had many times over the last couple of years occasions to blame Neil Lennon for a few things at Celtic. And I think also, do you see that as an issue when a young player's coming in and not demanding game time but wanting game time? How could that possibly be an issue? I remember Gordon Strachan getting interviewed once, and he was speaking about when he was I think it was he at Coventry City, and the guy that used to badger him for a game was Bellamy. And at that time, he was a very, very young player, and Strachan liked the fact that he was being badgered by a young player to get in the team. He obviously went on to play a huge amount of games for Coventry. And Gordon Strachan, in fact, wanted Bellamy and Hartson to team up at Celtic, but we didn't have the budget to make that deal permanent. Or we did, but we had other areas to strengthen as well. David Ferguson, evening folks, and a good evening to you as well, David. Thanks for joining us. It's incredible that you're all here on a Wednesday night. Helen McCallum for a friendly game. Can't wait to see the boys play. Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait myself. David Ferguson, thank the Lord the football is back. I've got Lewis Walker. I don't think Julien will be in the starting 11 come the start of the season, but I think if he proves himself, he could get a few starts under his belt. I think what he might find is, even if he's trying to sort out a loan deal with, clubs Celtic in fact, will be looking for that loan deal to obviously form part of a future permanent move, like it would have done at Schalke. But when he's going over there, it's not just a case of, all right, that's fine, I'm still going to get my wages this season. Schalke obviously are going to be speaking about what's your wages going to be when we make this permanent. And if you're a £7 million player, you're going to be one of the higher earners, James, and that could well have been the issue. So the deal that looked to be on, he's thinking to himself, right, why would I sign a 3-year deal at the end of this on much reduced wages? So maybe there's been a change in heart for Chris Julien, who knows? But again, I would use the example of Boyata. Remember, Boyata virtually went on strike against AEK Athens, but a winning goal at Celtic Park makes things all the better, and it can wipe the slate clean. If you come in, if you perform, if you play in the big games and play your part, I'm pretty sure more and more Celtic fans will be coming to your way of thinking and accept them back with open arms.
Yeah, we've just got to. The Julian fans have just got to hope that he can pull it out the bag here. I'm not too sure how the move sort of fell away at Schalke. I know Schalke have had the financial troubles out of late, so I'm not sure if it's more struggles on Schalke's end rather than the greed on Julien's narrative that I've sort of seen pushed on Twitter a bit.
I think also when you're looking at the fact that there was such a long period of absence because of the injury, you were worried about the failing of a medical. We know that doesn't necessarily mean you won't sign, but there was a concern there, and then obviously there's a lot of rumours. That does look like a plastic pitch, I've got to say. I'm just looking at the teams lining up for their pre-match photographs. That looks like an artificial surface that we'll be playing on tonight. Yeah, it undoubtedly is. Another few points to make. It's great to see some of the young kids on the bench. Obviously, we've got Ben Summers, 18 years of age, Matthew Anderson, 18, Josh Dede, 16, Rocco Vata, 17, I think. Rocco's 17. And we've got Owen Moffat. Now, Owen Moffat was in and about the team for pre-season last year. He got a few games during the campaign, but again, he's on the bench.
Came on right at the end of the League Cup final.
Yeah, fair play to him. Yeah, he did. Joe Hart is just swapping the pennants, etc., with the captain of our opponents tonight. So what we'll do is we'll go to the action, James. Let's watch the game. We will be back at full time. Enjoy the 90 minutes. We will be hopefully talking about a resounding victory after this, and a couple of hat-tricks for players like Kenny and maybe a Jetty as well. So thanks everybody for joining us. We hit about 400 tonight. Thank you for that and getting involved. And we will see you at full time. Thanks, James McKenzie, once again for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.